Hi, I'm Milla and welcome to another Milla's Game Room video. I'm Milla and I talk about the games that I like and the passions behind them, including things like RPGs, visual novels, queer stuff, and other things you've probably never heard of. So yeah, if you like what you like on here, please like, comment, subscribe, bell, etc. algorithm stuff, you know, the usual. This video is basically going to be me rambling a bit about game collecting on a budget because as I'm sure a lot of people will know, game collecting prices have kind of gone up a lot lately, especially for like retro stuff and niche stuff, especially because of the events of 2020. Just saying that because demonetization, even though I don't have to worry about that yet, but it doesn't matter. I think I want to kind of focus this on a bit like someone in like the perspective of people who collect the same kind of things I like collecting or play the same things I like playing, because that's what I'm you know about, and I'm sure like it's well known that things like JRPGs etc are quite expensive, especially if you're going after the old stuff like several years old etc. It's just really tiring having to deal with these price stuff, but there's still possible ways to get like deals and stuff, so I'm going to like talk about it. I do want to kind of make a little disclaimer thing, like, as well as aimed at like people who like similar things to me. I also focus on like low income a bit more, because if you have low income, which is especially the case in a capitalist hellscape, you won't have the money to plop hundreds of pounds on rare shit on eBay. That's just a objective fact. So I'm going to focus on that. Other thing as well is a lot of like advice for things in general tends to be subtly along the lines of do not be disabled or be from this privileged background, which has some ring of truth in it. And to give an example, a lot of advice people give are things like networking, trades, and that kind of thing, meeting other collectors, being friends with collectors, which is, yeah, there is some truth in that. But when you're disabled, it's like, it's difficult to sometimes get out and like make these friends and go to these events. And when you're from other backgrounds where you can't always amass the stock required to do trades and buy stuff, it's like, it's just feels like it's not really useful, if that makes sense. Like, I just want to put that out there because some people will be like, I don't plan on really talking about that particular aspect in this video, and people will be asking, oh, why haven't you put that there? Well, that's why. So, with that said, let's begin. First thing, try to learn where you can get deals. This can include things like buying direct from publishers, because they do sales, for example. Especially in your country, if the publishers have their own like store and you want to get stuff, that's where they put stuff. You can also do sales periods as well, which like Black Friday, which is overall quite hellish to be honest, but it's when stuff is cheaper, especially if you can spot the genuine stuff from the crap. There's also like pawn shops or like cash converting places where people can sell their stuff and the shop puts it on sale, and it can often be like significantly cheaper than if you were to walk into a place like, well, GameStop, CEX, etc., where the prices are on par with eBay or brand new, or slightly cheaper than eBay, because I know in the UK we have CX, often called Sex because of the name. The prices are a bit cheaper than eBay, and you can go into CX and buy stuff. I know the quality for buying from these shops can be kind of varied, especially when the covers are damaged and discs are scratchy. But I know as of late, my local like CX has actually started being a lot stricter in what they take. So if you go to CX, you're more likely to find stuff that actually works properly. Like things that have, not necessarily have the manual or a damaged cover, but things like the disc working fine or the cartridge not being damaged and not fake, because I've seen blatant fakes put on sale there in the past, which is really ridiculous, but not anymore. So obviously there's things like due diligence and stuff, spotting fakes as well, which also won't be covered here because this is on a budget after all, but that is something for a whole other like video thing, and others have done shit on it, which go look for that. Also things like importing, because if you're into niche stuff, you're gonna need to import shit if you want physical stuff, and it can be really fucking expensive. Like if you're in the US, you won't know this, or not really register how significant it is. But if you're in other countries, what a lot of these countries do is they charge VAT on goods that come in. It's a form of like protectionism, where they're like, oh, you should not buy from abroad, you should buy what's in this country. But if you're buying things like, say, limited run games and stuff, they're not going to be released in this country. So you either have to import or get digital. And I'll touch on digital in a second. And if you're going to like import, look for options where you can pay the customs up front. Like I've talked about, like getting games direct from publishers, so like limited run games, for example, do offer customs prepayments. Some publishers do have shops in direct in these countries, or if they do, they have them for at least some areas. Like I know in Europe, like some of these stores are based in the UK, and bear in mind the UK left the European Union, which I am not getting into here because I'd be ranting for like 10 minutes about why it's bad. In relation to games and publishing, it just makes it more expensive to get stuff because these publishers will not open a warehouse in the EU or even move to the EU because for whatever reason, even though the issues with shipping are not teething problems, they are permanent issues with alignment and trading across borders and other complex stuff with international trade, which I'm not an expert on. Most people in this country are not experts on, and it just means people can't buy them because they're expensive. So if you can find a service that offers customs up front, it will be better. There's also things like Amazon Japan, which yeah, I know, fuck Amazon, but one thing that Amazon Japan does do is customs prepayment up front. So it means getting things like this, the soundtrack Xena Bay 2, which would already a bit more expensive to ship because it's in a big box and not a CD case, would be cheaper because you're paying the shipping and a customs charge. In the UK, we have like Royal Mail and DPD, for example, and other companies, DHL too. When they arrive, they normally put the invoice down and either before a delivery, and it can be more expensive because like, we spent £8 handling this parcel, so we're going to charge you £8 on top of the £13 to £15 customs, which is more expensive because if you just do the prepayment, it cuts a lot of that handling cost, and maybe even the customs too. Just a thought. There's a lot. Digital I'll get onto later because I did mention it before. If you can, attempt to get the games that will be rare later on at launch. So some examples include, well, limited print games because some of them will become really expensive. Niche titles such as Japanese RPGs and visual novels, because a lot of games, especially when their companies are like, we're very wary about releasing them in the first place, later on they just will like just stop printing them, which I'll get onto that later as well. But what it does mean is that the prices will start to go up because people will pay them, and it means that people who just want copies will just lose out on the physical copies. And I know with the Vita especially, there goes a period where you get the games like at launch and a bit later, like a few months, 6 months or something, they're still fairly common, but after that it just gets expensive. It's kind of like attempt to, but also it's a sign of privilege if that people can. Like, if you don't have the highest of incomes, you can often only afford to get like 1 or 2 things at a time. So it means trying to buy these games and stuff, it often means having to make these difficult choices because these companies' business models thrive on like, to a degree, artificial scarcity, but it also is to a degree based on like the realities of production, because especially producing cartridges for like the Vita, but also the Switch, they're more expensive because they're cartridges, and often the Nintendo and especially will like, let's pass the cost down to the publishers instead of doing what we can to make them cheaper as. Yeah, it's just not viable for everyone, but if you can try for that, or if you're willing to risk it, you can get them later, but that's not the case. It's sometimes a risk that has to be taken to get things cheaper. Alright, next one. It's okay to be what's called a patient gamer, which is basically what I am. A patient gamer is basically someone that doesn't really buy new releases that often, sometimes not at all, for at least like 6 months to a year, and to a degree is like that with hardware as well. And Like, if it's okay to be a patient gamer, it's absolutely fine to wait years to pick up a game. You don't have to get the latest new title at launch unless you really want it. Like, last year, this was the only new release I got day one. Aside from Bowser's Fury as well. I was hyped for it. I knew I wouldn't be able to resist not getting it, so I got it. To give an example, it's fucking great. But at the same time, if you know you can wait, you can wait. And well, this game will be here when you get round to it. You can go round to a shop and still get it. Especially because in this particular case, Nintendo decided it was a good idea to publish it, so it's actually going to be available everywhere. For a while at least. Whereas with a lot of games, it's like, it's okay to wait a while. It's like, I'm not super compelled to play stuff, so you can probably wait for a while. And it's good to wait for a while. And for me, like, that includes, like, the end. Like, have to have a backlog, like with Switch, for example. I don't have many of the Switch Otome releases, for example. There's always plenty of stuff to play in the meantime. I've got a wall here of stuff, for example, that I've not played. Like, the majority of it I've definitely played. But there's some that I've not. And that's fine if you can't afford new games or you don't want to buy new games. It's okay to wait. It's okay. Likewise, it's also okay to go digital for games that are still available. Like, I've talked about the 3DS eShop closing on the podcast, talked about PS3 and Vita games closing on the podcast, which, by the way, link in the description for the podcast. Please tune in. I like to grow it, and it's great. I hope you like it. But also, the importance of getting these games digitally is like, they're more expensive later. Atlas games on the 3DS, for example, are notoriously expensive. This is like over £100, which pretty cool game. I love Rate Historia, fucking incredible. But it's just really expensive, like 200 quid for this, potentially. I've seen it go for, but I'm just under that. It's like way too much, but on the eShop, you can get it for like 30 quid. Absolutely okay to jump in now at 30 quid, it's incredible. Mega 10, for example, like Mega 10 5 is like inaccessible, but if it was like released on the day of Atlas on the 3DS, it would be expensive now. Like, you've got 4, which is cheap on the eShop. Apocalypse, which I don't have because that's too expensive, like 200 quid, potentially. Probably near 100, but still way too much for a game like that. And the rest of these, which some of these are really expensive as well. Those games you can still all get affordably digital. Some of them are also more affordable physical as well, which I'll get onto later. It's okay to simply buy less games. Like, capitalism encourages consumerism, it encourages FOMO, it encourages people to go, I must run out and I must buy this game, get it now, or you will miss out. And it will be a real shame because people will be playing this game and you'll be like, oh, maybe I could play this game. My mate is playing this game. My mate likes playing this game. I should play this game too. And then you can run out and give people your money even though they don't care about whether you like the game or not because you got their money. But, you know, it's also okay to stick to your hardware. Like, I have a Wii U, which is a good console. It's a junky thing with a tablet, better Switch, but it's still a good console. And part of that is because it can play Wii games. And it just means no need for a Wii. I can get a Wii if I want to. I kind of want to in the future for Mario Kart custom tracks, future content for this channel. Chick chick. But also, it's more like, not only is it cheaper to have like less consoles and run cheaper consoles, but you get perks like HDMI. You also get compatibility Wii stuff, and you can also like, it's just like less space taken up as well, and you have access to 2 libraries. But also, it's okay to hack consoles, mod them, put emulators on them. It's okay, and the reason why is you can take advantage of extra features not included in retail builds. But if you hack, you can. Likewise, if you hack a Wii U, not only can you also play Wii games, you can also play GameCube games, which is something that has like backwards compatibility as well with the Nintendo Wii. So it's that kind of thing where you can do that, and it's not too difficult. You just got to make sure you know what you're doing, and just in case, get a second console to hack, just in case you mess up. Because it can be risky if you don't know what you're doing, but it's absolutely worth it to save the extra cash and get more access to stuff, especially if the hardware itself is not being supported properly by the manufacturer anymore. Likewise, while I'm on to unofficial stuff, because yes, unofficial stuff in video games that isn't officially supported by corporations is absolutely vital for preserving the medium. And I don't care what anyone says, it's okay to emulate games that are too expensive to get physically or never released in your region. And that's kind of like, it's okay, like it's always going to be an option. And the way things stand, it's always going to be an option to people, and sometimes the only option for people to play these games they can't otherwise get. Like, I think about all these RPGs that were out on like the Super Nintendo, the N64, original PlayStation, like either before my time or when I was too young to really appreciate it. And what that means is trying to get an adult, it's like, fucking hell, that is really fucking expensive. Like, they're just expensive. And you can look for good deals. Like, I've gotten some of these more pricier games for good deals in the past, but it's ridiculous what some of these games go for now. And especially, like, I'm a European. In terms of localizations, we always got the short end of the stick. Like, yeah, we got some exclusives, but when it comes to JRPGs and some niche games, we would often never get physical releases. Like, I mentioned Vaxis no Tome, for example. Aside from like Hakuoki on the 3DS and later Vita releases, until the Switch, we got basically everything digital from them in terms of Otome, which is a bit shit, and it's kind of a shame. And sometimes you wouldn't get games at all. Like, even when these companies only release games digitally, they'd only put them out in the US PlayStation Store. So, it meant if you're European, you ain't getting it officially. You can't get it officially. Especially if you have old consoles like the Vita, where it's like, I'm sorry, you can only have one memory card on it set for one region. You can't have multiple. You have to reset it and lose all your games. And so you have to often get another bloody PS Vita to play stuff. So it's like you literally can't play it. So sometimes emulation is the only option to play stuff. And that's fine. Like, I think people need to understand that high prices for things, like, yeah, they are partly because people will run out and buy stuff. Like, want to pay 300 quid for a game? Here's 300 quid! And people go, oh shit, he's paying 300 quid for a game. I better pay 300 quid as well. And they drive the price up. But, and it's a big but, it's also a failing on the part of publishers too. In terms of not porting games, which is one example, which is one reason why Persona games are also quite expensive, because Atlas, they don't port their games a lot. Like, there's the Persona 4 Arena Ultimax remaster, which is a recent example, and Persona 4 Gold in a PC, which, fun fact, this goes for £50 on Vita now, partly because it's still exclusive to the platform. It was more expensive in the past, like near 70 to 80, but the PC port helped greatly bring the price down. And if it's got ported again, which it should, this will go down even more. It's a fantastic game and totally worth playing, but should not be exclusive to the PS Vita. I don't care what anyone says about that. It shouldn't be exclusive. It should be on all platforms at this point. Even bloody Xbox, on the Xbox Game Pass. I don't care. It should be on it. So the failure to have these games readily available, not just physically on one platform, but also on multiple platforms, like the PC, for example. Like with Vita games, you can get many of them on the PC now. The majority of those are no longer exclusive if they were to begin with. Especially when you release them in the West, because you can't release 3D games on their own in the West as exclusives anymore. Except, ironically, Otome, but that's beside the point. So, that's kind of the thing to remember, really. Like, it's okay to emulate. Don't feel ashamed for emulating when corporations have absolutely failed to make shit available. And then if you really like it later, then track down a physical copy. Because if you're having that on your shelf as a memento for your time with the game, at least you know it's going to be worth the £100 plus, or whatever you get. There's also joblots as well, which I forgot to touch on. You can get games in joblots. Like, I got 3DS stuff in joblots as well, because it's cheaper and you get more money for it, and you can sell the games you already have or don't want and make most of the money back, which is basically how I got some of my rarest 3DS games from my collection, which, hey, I did a collection now. What shit? I might link it if I remember when editing this thing. And finally, to remember, they're just video games. And it's not to say they've got no value, because people can have all these deep connections to video games, but they're just video games. Like, you're better off having your life or basic needs like food, water, shelter than video games. And if you need to sell video games to ensure you get those needs, or something else similarly important like life-saving healthcare, house deposits for renting and getting the hell out of places, like migration, then it's absolutely worth it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. If you have to do that, do it. They're just games. You can replace games because a lot of people like to call them products, even though I don't like that term, but it's true, they are products. It's capitalism, consumerism. They are products, but also they're art. And it's okay selling art if it helps you with other essential needs. And that's the tea. And that's what game collecting on a budget should be. If you need to sell games, to buy more games, or to meet other needs, do it. And same with turning to unofficial means and trying to haggle for deals and stuff, as well as the social skills side I mentioned earlier, which I won't get into, but yeah. I've probably gone on for a while now, so I'm going to stop. I'm not sure how I'm going to make these videos a weekly thing, because I'm kind of wanting to do weekly videos instead of bi-weekly like I originally planned, because I actually like making videos more. Like, it's so easy to do, and I enjoy it, as you can see. I'm more confident with the camera, and it can be a lot to take in and deal with, but you know, I like to talk about games, I'll talk about games, and people like hearing what I have to say. So, yay, good for me, and also good for those watching, because it's nice seeing people appreciate it and be like, oh, I want to play this rare RPG that you like, Milla. And now this is going really off topic, so I'm going to stop for today. Stay tuned for like podcast episodes, which will be every 2 weeks, and also videos, which, as I mentioned, might be weekly, bi-weekly. I will keep it up in the air, but you know, thank you, and bye-bye.